You know that feeling you get when you have an itch somewhere, like on your back, wherever it might be, and you can't itch it for some reason. You can't scratch it, right? Maybe you're doing a medical procedure, or maybe you just can't reach a certain spot, or whatever it might be, right? You're holding something. It's funny, I just scratched my back as I said it. In those moments, at least for me, what I often feel is like it's a compulsion. Like I need to scratch that space, right? Where I think of it, where it happens most is like when I'm getting a haircut. If I'm at the barber shop and they're cutting my hair, and you're kind of in the, the cape things over you, and you're not really supposed to move. But there's times in which like I just have to, and sometimes the itch will be on my head, and I just have to scratch it. And it feels like in the moment when I'm waiting and I'm trying to fight it, that it's getting worse, like it's intensifying. And it's just building and building and building, and I just have to scratch that thing. It's a compulsion to have to do it. I say that because to me it's an interesting parallel to what it feels like when you're in a moment, psychologically, right, cognitively, and your subconscious is starting to be triggered. And it's starting to tell you you need to do something, right? You need to react. You need to get angry. You need to get defensive, right? Something has to happen when it really doesn't. And I had an example of this recently with a family member, right? So it was something with my son, and just kind of general kind of parenting technique and approach. And there was a family member who was saying something that they were being a little bit declarative about it, right? A little bit too certain, which is always naturally going to trigger me a little bit. But putting that aside, even more importantly, it was at odds with what I believed, what I thought was the right way to do it. And as I was hearing it happening, and it was in the midst of a conversation with a few people, so it wasn't direct one-on-one. So as I was experiencing it happening, I started to feel it, right? Just like that itch, I started to get like a physical feeling. And for me, it's always in my stomach. And I started to feel this like intense feeling. And what I value now is, through a lot of this work, and it's not easy and I don't always get it right, but I'm able to pause. I'm able to stop and kind of pull back and observe that and look at it and see what it is. And I can start to feel and see that compulsion. And it's almost, I've said it before, it's almost like there's this pre-paved groove that's just so easy for me to just fall right into and just go. And in this case, it would have been to tear down what the person was saying, to get defensive, to get angry, to attack it, to prove why my view was right. And I did not like this thing that they were saying. And as I say with the itch, it's just, it felt like such a strong burning compulsion to have to do that in the moment. It feels like there's not even a choice in the matter. And it's funny as I think about it now, and I've done this a number of times and really reflected back on times where I have just went right and just followed it. There's not even a pleasure that comes with it, right? Much like that itch. It's not like when I do it, I feel great and like there's an overall sense of pleasure. It's just the removal of discomfort. It's just like scratching that itch. I don't necessarily feel better. It's just I got rid of that discomfort. I got rid of that uncomfortable itch that I had. I almost think of it as like a really heavy chain smoker who hasn't had a cigarette for a while. There's this feeling like I need a cigarette, I need a cigarette, I need a cigarette. And it's frantic, it's chaotic, it's compulsive, I need it. But it's not actually going to make you feel good after you get it. It's almost a relief of that discomfort. Which at times is a good thing, but it's different. It's different than actually feeling good about what happens. So back to the parallel, right? In the instance of this family member saying something I didn't like, what you start to recognize, or at least what I've started to recognize, is the power of being able to pause, being able to observe that kind of objectively, and that it passes, it burns out. Just like that itch. If you can't scratch that itch, eventually it's going to go away, right? It's in your mind to some extent. It's the same thing here. As deeply as it feels like a need, a compulsion, this frantic, chaotic pull that's telling me like you have to shut this person down, you have to tell them why they're wrong. If you can withstand it, if you could just step back and watch it and observe it, it passes. It burns out. It's not there, right? At least for me. And in that moment when it burns out, when that compulsion is gone, the clarity that I feel is so much higher. And for me, the way I think of it is it's the conscious mind stepping in for the subconscious. The subconscious, which is just trying to fire off and trigger, and you just have to respond, and there's discomfort here, and fix it. The conscious mind steps in and is like, whoa, hold on. There might be some discomfort here, but maybe it's not as bad as we think it is. Let's think clearly about this. And in those moments, and in this instance, I'm able to think rationally and say, why would I be angry by this? Let me evaluate it. Let me assess it. Maybe there's some credence to what they're saying. Let me work through it. Maybe they're wrong. Maybe they're right. Like, let's go through the process. And that's obviously a valuable, beneficial thing. And what I find is just, it's the experience of doing it. It's such a hard thing when you're in that moment with that itch or the person saying something you don't like. That compulsion feels so real. It's burning so hot. It's so intense that you feel like there is not another option. I have to just do this thing. But once you do it a few times, as hard as it is, it starts to become a proof point. It starts to become easier and easier and easier. And you can step back and you can get that clarity and realize it will burn out and ultimately, hopefully, make a much more big L logical decision.